we're going a little bit out of turn here right now because my boss, Colonel Gresham, hasn't arrived yet, and he would be giving you the overview of all of our international enterprise and then the part in London that he personally manages. We're skipping to my office for now, and we'll go back to Colonel Gresham, and you can piece it all together at the end, and hopefully it'll make sense. This is just a snapshot of what my office looked like 1 year ago, and we've had a lot of changes. I've had military move and retire that haven't been replaced. I had a person doing job enlargement that's now back in her other division. I've got one guy right now, Ken Garetta, that's going to be transitioning to one of our technical directorates. And so this is what I have right now. I don't have any military. I have a AAAS fellow that works on data mining. I have a couple of program managers, and I've got a couple of people that are listed at the bottom that have just been attached to my office. Although they don't really work for me, they're just not large enough to be an office of their own. These are the programs that we engage in, the Engineer Science and Exchange program that I'll talk a little bit more about, as well as the Window on the World program. The Visiting Scientist program is actually domestic, but we run it out of our office. The data mining that I mentioned, and we'll talk about a little bit more. We work on strategy, we work on initiatives with DC organizations that I'll get into a little bit more. Then we do some other things. We do ITAR issues, we do tech security training type things. We're involved in bilaterals that either AFRL or SAF or OSD are involved in the Washington, D.C. area. We manage an international activities library of the activities that are going on throughout AFRL. We put out a newsletter. We put out an opportunities document that's an annual summary of what the scientists and our other technical directorates recommend that we be looking at internationally and where we should be going. And we act as a DC area representative for the rest of our international office, particularly since they don't have the travel budget to return to us as often as would be appropriate. So I'll talk a little bit about the Engineering Scientist Exchange program. This is a program where our scientists and engineers can go overseas and work in military laboratories, typically for up to 2 years, and vice versa, overseas scientists and engineers from other MOD organizations abroad are able to come to the United States and work with us in our laboratory. We have agreements with 16 different countries. We manage some of them, the Army manages some of them, but it really all mixes together, and the Navy is involved as well. For our researchers, we had one that returned to us in 2013, and this represented sort of a lull in the program. If any of you have been overseas on an exchange of any kind or an overseas assignment, you understand the value and you understand what it does for you and how it develops in your career. If you haven't been overseas, it's a difficult concept to explain sometimes. And we were at a point a couple of years ago where the person that owned the program over in SAF-IA didn't really understand it well enough to put the resources into it. So we only had one person return in 2013. We had 3 others there that have been overseas during 2013 and are returning this summer. We have a group that was selected to start in 2013, and they're over there right now, and you can see the variety of different countries that we're putting people into, and a lot of these are first evers for getting people to say Chile and Czech Republic, a few other places. This is the group that was selected in FY13 to start this year and will be overseas to 2016. And we also had 14 people from overseas that came and worked in our laboratory. They usually come for about a year. Most of them you see are to the U.S. Air Force Academy or AFIT, and a lot of that just has to do with the security situation of giving people access to the laboratories and the facilities that they need. Moving on to the Window on the World program. This is a program where we can pay the travel costs from AFOSR for a researcher to go overseas for up to 6 months to work typically at a university or other non-government facility. We had 3 people in FY13 that had submitted proposals, were selected for the program, and then we got hit with the travel restrictions, and nobody could travel anywhere. So these 3 people were told, wait until FY14 and you're still in the program, you're still selected. The first one there, ESEP, he ended up getting DARPA funding. And so he had his window on the world thing set to go, and DARPA paid his way. He went over to Belgium, very, very successful visit, and ended up about a month ago winning the AFMC International Cooperation Award. The second individual there is going to reschedule, and the third individual there is left on Saturday, I understand, and he's on his way to Japan.
And he's in Japan now.
I mentioned the data mining. This is a sort of a single shot of the different things that our AAAS fellow, Dr. Peter Revez from University of Nebraska, is doing for us. He's been with us now for about 1.5 years, and he's on a 2-year term. When he came in, the idea of this was that he could really help maximize the travel that our overseas offices do by helping target the right professors to talk to, the locations to go to, figure out who's doing what where. He's also doing real research, and he's been publishing because he's discovering some of these trends and pulling some of the information out of the knowledge that he has. Unfortunately, with the travel restrictions we had last year, we've accumulated a lot of data, and now that things are opening up again, we hope to use it. This is just a quick list of the different data mining studies that he has done, and now that we can travel again, hopefully we'll be able to act on most of these. Mentioned bilateral programs. Being here in DC is our opportunity to work with embassies, to work with other agencies of the US government in leveraging our resources to do things bilaterally. We've done these in the past. The very first one that we did was back when we started working with Russia, the Russian initiative. We've had other successful ones that you'll hear about. I'm sure that Taiwan Nanoscience and the Korean Nanoscience initiatives that are now managed out of EOARD. The initiatives that we start, you know, if somebody comes to you and says, what do you want to do in Germany? That really doesn't mean a whole lot, because there might be good things going on there and other things going on there, and it's not necessarily managed by Germany per se. But for these initiatives, we've looked for areas where countries were putting in very large investments of their own that we could leverage, or in the case of the Russian initiative, where they had done 40 years of research as part of the Soviet Union, and it was an opportunity now to work with them and bring that knowledge into the United States. Sophie bin Solomon has been the individual who has been working these. He came to us as a AAAS fellow, and he was the first AAAS fellow that we had come into ION. And we discovered an amazing thing, and that was that his class of 160 or so AAAS fellows that came to town at the same time had all bonded, had all formed a network throughout virtually every place in Washington. So Sophie could pick up the phone and call the White House and talk to people that he knew. He could go to the State Department. He could go to other places. And he was able to use this to just massively leverage these other agencies that he was working with. And most of these agencies, these other countries aren't so much after our money anymore. They just want to work cooperatively with us. We had started an African initiative. We tried to start one back in about 2009. People from EOARD went to Africa, solicited some proposals. We funded them, and that's about as far as it went. We try to look strategically at the places, what they're doing, where they're doing it, so we can target the right things and look for the emerging science that's on the continent. And what Sophie found was that the State Department recommended that he work with South Africa as a gateway into the rest of Africa. They're very good at science themselves, and they build connections throughout the continent. So Sophie worked with all of these different organizations that you see up there. They put together a very successful workshop, which was held over in South Africa. It was followed up by very successful site visits over there. And now we're organizing something for the Africans to come over here to Washington this summer. And I think he has at least a dozen of them so far that have organizations that will pay their way for them to come here, to be here for 2 full weeks to work with us and see what we can do. So as I mentioned, starting in South Africa and then expanding outward. We have another one that we did with Australia. The State Department has these things called Joint Commission meetings, which they bring together different organizations from the United States and different organizations of the other country to compare notes and look for places to work cooperatively. And they had one of these JCMs, was actually, it says there FY10, it was actually FY11, where we participated. We got to know some people in the nanofabrication facilities that they have down there in Australia. It resulted in a large contingent, again, of individuals from Washington going over to Australia, visiting the facilities. In return, we had a workshop that we held here in Washington, D.C., had a lot of people from Australia that participated in it. And now it's leading to future activities that are including student exchanges that are being set up now. And we're going to have another trip, I believe, this fall to go down and look at some of the other facilities and look for places where people can go on window on the world tours and work in Australia. A few of the others, Turkey, Italy, United Kingdom. The one I'll mention is Italy. The Italian military doesn't fund 6-1 research itself, but it recently decided that it was an important element to keep track of. So they set up a small office. There's a few people working out of the embassy here on this to sort of track where is Italy doing 6-1 activities that are of interest to the Italian military so that they could try to connect that with us. And we had a rather large meeting here this last summer, and we put a lot of that together. It resulted now in the Italian military paying the travel costs for some of the scientists in Italy to come to the program reviews here in the United States. And we'll see how that develops. And we'll be looking for exchanges and other type things. So with that, I'll contribute my 7 minutes that is left to the good of the cause and be happy to answer any questions. Okay, Colonel Gresham has arrived.
So do I have 30 minutes still, or quicker?
If you can speed it up, you can go too.
Okay.
How's this sound?
Good.
Okay. So I've been told I have as much time as I need, but if I'm quicker, that's better. So we'll try to be quicker. So I'm Colonel Kyle Gresham. I wear 2 hats. I'm the commander of the AFOSR OSR detachment in London, known as EOARD, but I'm also recently the director of AFOSR's International Science Program Office. So you've already heard from the Washington office, and I think you're going to hear from the Tokyo and Santiago office after me. I'll give an overview on kind of the goals and mission of what this international office is, what we're trying to do in this new combined structure, but also focus on some of the things we're doing in Europe in particular. And I'll give a caveat because we talked to the Scientific Advisory Board last week, and I want to make it clear that everybody in AFOSR does international work. It's not just our office. We have everyone who's assigned overseas, but certainly every program manager here is capable and sometimes very capable of working overseas. We're just there to be partners, so just to be clear. So let's go to the next chart. So here is us today, and the yellow banner is our mission statement. Because there's so many things you could do overseas, this was our attempt. As I get older, things like mission statements and vision statements and core values mean a lot more, and it really is true. We do 2 things, and if you take anything from this briefing, it's that the international detachments provide awareness and access to the Air Force. There's lots of activity, but this is our mission. And if you're familiar with the history of EOARD, we've been around for 60 years. EOARD in Tokyo has been around since the early 90s. Jim Fillerup set up Santiago in South America in the mid-2000s. And of course, you just heard from Maurice, we've had some presence here in Arlington doing international work for as long as OSR's been here. So there's a significant investment in the number of people doing this business. There's 30-some people with the vision looking out of the United States, trying to find places where we can engage. As you hear the rest of the briefings this week, you'll see that the numbers we have, 21 people in this international program officer role. The people here in Arlington are called program officers, but the same mission of, with your core money, going out and making deals and engaging. There's a significant number of people looking outward, and so we have to make sure we use this resource wisely. Our budget is fairly small compared to the overall OSR budget, but because we've made the investment to be overseas, it's important that we make best use of this resource, and we feel like we're making some progress. And of course, I'm happy to talk to anyone about how we might be doing that mission better. Next slide. As I said, we've been doing the business of outreach in Europe since the 50s. And when we brought all the offices together, where the Europe office and Asian office and the Santiago office all used to just report directly to the director, Dr. Russell said, I'd like you to be a little more strategic. Can we increase collaboration? Can we increase effectiveness by merging you all under one person? And that happens to be me, IMIO, and that is it for your interface between me and the director of OSR. So I wouldn't say we've created these tenets. I think we've maybe refreshed them or rediscovered them. And the basic one is in our mission statement. We provide awareness and access. Now, you can be aware of the international community by, in the comfort of your own home, reading things on the internet and Googling top researchers in Europe. That's one way to do awareness and access, but we believe you need to be there and be engaged. If you want to have a robust relationship, which we feel is what brings value to this business, you need to be there. And so engagement to us means being immersed in the community. If you want to be aware of what's going on in the international community, you need to be a member of it. And for us, that means we are there. And the Air Force does this. We invest a significant number of dollars to put people and their families there. You go to school on the economy in Tokyo and London, and even though they speak English in the UK, it's not like the US. So it's a significant commitment to go overseas and do this mission, but we believe that investment is worth it. Now, there's so much you can do overseas, and we only have 21 people to do all relevant research for the Air Force in every country in the world, so you can't possibly do that mission, so we have to be flexible. And that flexibility allows us to go from opportunity to opportunity. When you're first assigned overseas, you have a 3 or 5 year assignment. If you're a very senior person in your field, you might have a very good idea about exactly who you want to engage with and what kind of outcomes you would hope to provide. But first of all, the people we get overseas aren't always senior. And in fact, the environment is so dynamic, I think after you've been there a year, you'll find your goals have changed. And we like to give our people a lot of autonomy and flexibility to go after those opportunities as they best see fit. So we empower our international program officers. They are the key to our mission. When these people are empowered and given a little bit of core money, they are the people who do our job the best. And it's a tenet of air power. You don't try to centralize control and centralize execution. We try to decentralize it, and that has worked well for us for decades. Now, even with these super empowered individuals, given a lot of autonomy, you still can't do it all yourself, and we don't do it all ourselves. We are just a partner, and we team not only with the program managers here at OSR, we team as much as we can with the AFRL technology directorates who also care about what's going on overseas. But it's also fortunate that we're co-located with DoD partners. So in London, ONR Global, kind of our counterpart organization that cares about research overseas. Their commanding officer, who was in Singapore, will now be in London as of June. So you'll have the two heads of these international offices on the same base there at RF Blenheim Crescent in Western London. The Army, RDECOM, Forward Element Atlantic, they have offices in Tokyo and Santiago, as well as Air Force and Navy. We try to partner with these folks, and this leads to monthly technical exchanges. It has led to joint trips. When we go visit a PI somewhere in the world, those visits are always richer when you do it with an Air Force, Army, and Navy partner with you. And I'll add that it's even better if you can bring someone from the US, say an OSR or AFRL contact. So we have to partner, we can't do this all, and we try to be good team members in engaging in this mission. So these are our basic tenets, and we didn't just create these. I think this is how we've been operating, but it's good to get it down on paper. And if you'd want to talk to me about it, or any of my folks, I encourage you to. Next. So the things that made us valuable back in the 40s are still true today, maybe more so. We do try to pay attention to higher headquarters guidance. The DSB wrote a report on basic research. It's getting to be 2 years old now. And they talk about the need to be engaged overseas. We are, one of the recommendations, if you go deep into the report, I think it's around page 90, one of the recommendations is to consider a global research satellite lab. That is a place where instead of just giving grants to PIs or going to visit PIs, you have a place where people can go from the US permanently and work for a number of months. And we are investigating that in our Asian office in Korea. Because of relationships we've made with universities there, we're looking to perhaps place US scientists and engineers in this institute to do research for extended periods of time. So we are trying to act on one of these DSB recommendations. Mr. Al Schaefer, he's been to visit Asia a lot, he and his staff in the last year. And of course, he is a fan of us being engaged overseas. I believe he's meeting this week with members of the UK on a recently announced agreement. And then lastly, in the Air Force, Dr. Mark Mayberry, our previous Air Force Chief Scientist, his last report came out in May or June of 13, was called Global Horizons. And we were fortunate to contribute, at least virtually, to that report. We couldn't travel to the meetings, but we certainly contributed a lot to the document itself. And in fact, the only TDY I got last year was when he came to Europe and I got to go with him. And we had a great visit to the UK and to Germany. He, of course, spells out in that report the need for looking outside the US. The US is a great place to do research, but there are a lot of other people doing things, and it's our job to help with the awareness and access. So we do try to pay attention to what was being said up at higher headquarters and act on it locally. Next. So, talking about awareness and access. What I have here are pictures that I pulled from briefings that all of my program officers give, and I'm not going to give all those briefings, but I'll just give you, it's a way for me to talk about what is awareness. You know, it's a word, it's a description, but what does it mean? So if you look at the, as I'm looking at it, top right, it's a map of Asia. Lieutenant Colonel Brian Sells was given the information and cyber portfolio in Tokyo. And there had been some legacy programs, but he was really starting from scratch. And given a small core budget and told to go create a program or start creating a portfolio, he did a very nice job of systematically talking to experts, going to visit, mapping out universities. Some wonderful universities in Asia will not talk to the Department of Defense, so you can't always go work with everyone you'd like to. But he systematically has started to create a portfolio and plans to go invest in these areas where we see there's value. So that's, if you'd like to talk to him about that, please engage with him. Moving over, you see a notional cartoon of a photonic circuit. Lieutenant Colonel Victor Putz in London is a very nice effort where he's engaged with 3 different groups working in quantum photonics, all using slightly different tactics to get at this problem. And it's wonderful. The amount of money we spend is very little, but yet we get access to 3 very different and very good groups as they approach this important issue for us in the Air Force. You already saw the logo next to that, the Australian National Fabrication Facility. Mark Maurice talked about that. This was a consortium of universities and government laboratories in Australia. There was a visit, getting probably to be 2 or 3 years ago, with multiple members from not only our Asian office, but AFOSR and AFRL. and I believe even Dr. Erbschlow. Was that true? Do we have the chief scientist? Okay. And that has led to a number of collaborations and access to facilities there in Australia. Going down, you have a map of what's called the MENA, Middle East, North Africa. We don't just go to Oxford and Cambridge in Europe. We also try to pay attention to the other less obvious areas. Some of this was motivated by talking to ONR Global. They assign some of their folks to regions, and they're supposed to cover all the science in that region. In the Air Force, we have always given someone a technical area and told them to follow that technical area to whatever region it led. So there was a slightly different way to give people assignments. So I asked my folks to pick some regions in Europe and do a little more digging, even if it wasn't in their area. So my Directed Energy Program Officer, John Gongleski, is very interested in what might be going on in the Middle East. He's been to Dubai, he's been to Qatar, and we need to be, if we're doing the awareness mission, we can't just go to the obvious places. Next to that is a logo of AFRL. This was produced at University of Sheffield along with the Boeing Advanced Research Center. Lieutenant Colonel Ty Pollock has become aware of some very neat science going on in additive manufacturing in the UK, and I'm aware of some wonderful things being done in Germany. And so he is providing awareness to these developments. And next, you have a projection of the globe with the magnetic equator. And one of the benefits of having offices all over the globe, it's not a benefit when you want to have a telecon, I can tell you that. But it's great when you want to pay attention to anomalies or scintillation events around the magnetic equator, because Jim Phillips has wonderful collaborations going on in Chile and Peru. And as you can see on the map, that's where you need to be. Tom Cottle, our space vehicles detailee, who's in Europe, recently has awarded a grant to a researcher in Ethiopia. As you follow the map around, you can see they happen to be in a very rich area. So this is what awareness is to us. We try to provide value and provide insight into areas you might not be aware of, or if you have a question about area and would like some help, that's what we're there to do. Next chart. So I won't read everything on the right. I will just state that we have many ways to be aware, and many of these tools are tools available to everyone. We try to maintain awareness of trends. We want to know where the leading institutions are. Certainly the leading researchers and their publications, and that's, everybody does that. That's a global activity. In terms of relevant science, we aren't just overseas looking for any good science. We want to make sure it's science relevant to the Air Force. And people who really help us with that are people here at OSR and the researchers they work with in the United States, and also the technology directorates. So when we're aware of what they are concerned about and care about, it makes us smarter and better at doing our job. There are wonderful facilities in the United States. There are wonderful facilities in overseas, and we try to be aware of those. And finally, we try to pay attention to where do other countries or other countries' funding agencies, where are they making big bets? It's different. In Europe, we have the EU. That is a wonderfully big organization that impacts all of Europe. There's nothing like that in Asia. So there, the countries tend to make their own investments within country. So we try to pay attention to this, and it's a nice big puzzle to pay attention to. Next. So, what are the global trends we are generally aware of? Anybody in my business of paying attention to overseas research has used this chart of the map showing from 2000 to 2010, the percentage of publications coming out of the US is decreasing. That's not that there isn't great work being done here, it's just that the rest of the world is also publishing. And it's just a fact. It isn't that you shouldn't be in the US, it's just that we believe that our office provides some hedge against the risk of not paying attention to what's overseas, and so we want to pay attention to that. There are opportunities. As I mentioned, there are countries like, as I'll talk later about in Asia, certainly the EU makes big investments in technology, and we have such small dollars compared to that. We try to pay attention to where the elephants are walking, and if it's a problem of interest to the Air Force, then we try to leverage it. In general, collaboration, science is a global business. In Europe, collaboration is very prevalent, and in fact, I think one of the reasons that we combined our offices was to increase collaboration amongst our offices, and so you're seeing more of that. And then there's growth in developing areas. I mentioned the Middle East, North Africa. There's a picture of KAUST. Basically, in Saudi Arabia, they have significant funding, and they have built world-class facilities and are looking to recruit world-class researchers. And the question is, will this last? Will there be payoffs? And so we're looking forward to a visit to KAUST sometime this year by my directed energy program officer to see what is going on there and where might there be opportunities for us. Next, please. Okay, a little example. Here we have a chart from a Bilateral report. If on the y-axis you have scientists and engineers per million people in the country, and on the bottom you have R&D as a percentage of GDP. And probably everyone here has seen a chart like this. The US shows up very nicely here. Here's China. Yes, there's an outlier in Israel. And so everyone can see these reports. So what does my office do about this? Well, when I asked him to start looking regionally, my material science program officer, Lieutenant Colonel Pollock, said, well, he saw a few things. So next chart, or next click. Actually, I credit some of this to Gernot Pomrinke, because he would stop me in the halls for years and say, we're really missing some opportunities in Scandinavia. And I mentioned that very quote. And so Ty said, well, yeah, there's some wonderful countries here that are showing up on the top right of the chart. But you could all see that from here in the US. So what else do we do? Next. Well, we found another report, this one talking about global innovation. And again, these Scandinavian countries all end up being in the top 20. I'll note that there can only be one US, and they're number 5. So the US is still pretty good. It's just there's other places that are known for their innovation. So still haven't really done much. Next. Well, then we dug into, okay, these wonderful universities that are in this part of the world, have we ever funded them? Have we ever even visited them? Have we ever had any interaction with their PIs? And what we found was we went back 5–10 years, we hadn't done much. So then we looked into, okay, what are they publishing in Finland? What's going on in Norway and Sweden? And what we found was this looked like a fairly rich place to be engaged with, and we certainly wanted to know more. So next chart. So what do we do? Well, when you're in London and when you're finally allowed to go TDY, you can take a trip to Finland. But it wasn't just a bunch of Air Force people. There's no way you can read this. I can barely read it. So on the top, I'll tell you, it's a member of the Army Science Outreach Office, 2 members from my European office. We actually had there's an Army Corps of Engineers office there, also in London. He went along. And we had someone from ONR Global. This group was hosted by senior members of the Finnish Defense Force. And next. And we saw a lot of briefings, just like you're all going to see a lot of briefings this week. And I'd like to declare victory after this chart, but I can't declare victory. All I can tell you is we saw a lot. Some of it was interesting. The payoff will be, if you come ask us in a couple years, did this lead to anything? Did we act on it? Were there some opportunities here that we were able to either make a connection, or did we make some investment, and was there some payoff? So it's not just good enough to say we saw a lot of briefings, although maybe no one here has seen 30 briefings from Finland. Well, we did that, and we do that for you, and we hope to do more of that. And we do it in this kind of prioritized way, because you could see 30 briefings in any country in the world you wanted to go to. We thought that Scandinavia was rich. So this is how we try to provide awareness. Next. Now, the next part of our mission is access. And where does awareness end and access begin? I might suggest that access begins when you're starting to spend money. If you're starting to spend money, if you're exchanging ideas, now you've achieved access. And this is very important. Again, I picked charts off of briefings that are developed by my international program officers, and I'll just mention a few of these highlights. So in the case of this picture, we have something from Lieutenant Colonel Tammy Lowe's briefing she gave last week in Asia, and it's an AFOSR international initiative run by the EOARD office, and these are strong efforts going on in Taiwan and South Korea in nanomaterials. And these have been going on for 3, maybe 6 years, started by ideas of people here who saw there were major national investments going on in these countries. And the idea was, well, we could try to duplicate that all in the US, or instead we could try to partner with them. And this has been a very rich, and this is always well received by people who hear this idea of, in this case, we fund researchers in the US, Taiwan and Korea fund researchers on their side, and these groups get together and collaborate. So that is the model. This is a way of engaging and getting access in Asia. As we go over to the middle, we have a picture of Mama Yucca, which is an observatory in Chile. I think any week now, the first telescope in the Falcon telescope network will go into the southern hemisphere in this observatory. And this is the work, in some ways, helped along by Jim Filler up in his office in South America. And so that is access. You're taking data from a part of the world you would not have access to otherwise. Going around to the logo for IMEC. IMEC is a wonderful fabrication facility in Belgium. And this is a multi-part story. It involves, there's a program started by ASD R&E called ACE, Advanced Counter Electronics. This was Mr. Lemnios who started this interest in creating electronics 100 times faster and 100 times lighter for purposes of employment in lots of systems. And to do that, to combine optics and RF on the same circuit board is a challenge. And there are only a couple places in the world that do this well. I'm aware of IME in Singapore, but IMEC in Belgium is another place. And a researcher in Sensors Directorate was very interested in getting access to this. So we were helping to propose set up a trip for him. I have to mention my friend Gernot. Is he in the room? I'm giving him lots of credit. I'm sorry he's not here to hear it. He helped give a small grant. I think, though, Brett Pokinis in our South American office was a main driver on it. And this created a small 40 or 50K grant at IMEC for this Sensors Directorate researcher to go there, sit there and work and create a tool set for creating circuit boards. And then there was a return visit from IMEC scientists and engineers to give a talk at DARPA. And so this is access to world-class facilities. This is, I'm told, a $7 billion foundry. These do not just crop up anywhere in the world, and it's a way for the US to partner and gain advantage. Going down to the Union Jack picture, Dr. Tom Cottle has a big interest in space situational awareness coming from space vehicles. And because of his access to the UK Met Office and their relationship in terrestrial weather with the US, but also space weather with Air Force Weather Agency, he has had, or has made some wonderful progress in talking about how we can share data on the issue of space weather. And again, because he's there, he can go to the meetings, and I think we're going to see some nice payoffs there. And then last picture is these two gentlemen, which a lot of people talk about collaborating with them. It doesn't hurt when you're a Nobel laureate. It's Kostya Novoselov and Andrei Geim at Manchester. We had access to this group in 2010 when John Beckel from RX spent a couple months working in their laboratory prior to the announcement of the Nobel Prize in October 2010. And these continue to be strong collaborators for us. They don't need any more money from us. They have received lots of money. And this facility is a 50 million pound innovation center built there right next to their laboratories in Manchester for the purposes of letting industry come in and try to see, is there something to this graphene science? Are there any spin-offs that can lead to developments? And we're very happy to continue to collaborate with them. Victor Putz, the guy who does my quantum work, also manages the graphene. And this is the kind of access we feel is of value to the Air Force, and this is the kind of thing we're happy to do. Next. Okay, in terms of tools for access, research grants and money. We don't have a lot of it, but each one of my program officers has a little, and it's their core money, and with that, they're allowed to make deals and usually end up multiplying the money they're given in the core by 2 or 3 times. That's very important. We love to support conferences. I don't know, what can you say about conferences? Where's a place where you can get 100 great scientists in a peer-reviewed environment talking about the latest and greatest work they do? It's called a conference. And we love going there, and we love when they're overseas. So we try to support them if we can, and we try to attend them if we can. Two programs that you sometimes heard about, Windows on Science, Windows on the World. What are they? Windows on Science is a program to bring scientists from overseas to talk in the US to Air Force laboratories. And we have done, I think I have a chart coming up, we used to do hundreds of these a year. And it's a way either someone in the technology directorate said, boy, I'd really like to meet someone, or it's someone we find and we suggest they go to the United States. Windows on the World is the reverse trip where US scientist spends, it's not just a week, usually it's a couple months working kind of in grad student mode in a laboratory. John Beckel did it in the Manchester group, learning about graphene, and the Sensors Directorate person did it at IMEC. Again, great way to bring value. We have some graduates of the Engineering and Scientists Exchange Program. We run the Air Force portion of this program. Phil Gibber does that from our Arlington office here. Dr. Greg Abate, my tech director at EOARD, spent 2 years in Germany on this program. People who do this, those are valuable people to come later to my unit. And finally, project and data exchange agreements. This is, I'll admit, this has not been a focus area of mine, but my soon-to-be new boss, Dr. Brazier, certainly is interested in it, so I'll be paying attention to it. And these things can be ginned up by anybody in the laboratory, and it's seen as value by headquarters, so we'll be trying to do what we can to show how science, what we find, might lead to these kinds of agreements in the future. Next. Okay, so what have we done in EOARD in the last year? We cut 97 grants in 22 countries, supported 20 conferences, and there we are, almost 50 Windows on Science visits. You know, when you cut a grant overseas, it's challenging. These are people who've never dealt with the government, and so there's a lot of hand-holding in terms of getting them to various websites to get approval to receive money. And then we mail checks to them. And if you've ever tried to track checks through various postal systems, it's a challenge. So every one of those is hard fought. Europe is a great place to be. We, within London, we have wonderful access, even within the local travel area that I can approve, to many fine universities. We're definitely in the right place in Europe. It's a highly collaborative environment, and I'm repeating some of the things I've said. The EU cares about science. There are wonderful programs and leading institutions in Europe, and we try to make sure we're aware of that. Next. This is the office as it looks today. I am the EOARD director, or EOARD commander, so that means I have to help run the base there in Western London, as well as run the whole international business. We have, here are our program officers. There used to be 9. Jamie Lawton will be arriving here in Arlington to help take over some of the portfolios, so we're down to 8. And our support team, which we used to have twice as many people. At this point, we're down to the bone. I don't think I can do business with any fewer than these, and this is very valuable. If there's support people in the room, they know how valuable they are, and we ask them to do a lot of things, and administrative burden keeps adding. I haven't, in my 2.5 years, seen anybody say we can do less admin work, so it's a very important part of our business. Next. The kind of characters we like to engage with, I've mentioned Andre Geim. I will jump down here to Sir John Pendry, another person that Victor Putz is engaged with in terms of metamaterials work. Professor Bloch won a European Science Prize for quantum computing last year. Professor Gratzel is someone we've engaged with, and he was the winner of the Millennium Technology Prize for dye-sensitized solar cells. And then in terms of people who make a difference, we had a PI in Tel Aviv University, and he's now the chief scientist of the Israeli Ministry of S&T. So people we like to engage with. Next. And I will leave you at that. If you remember 2 words, remember awareness and access, and I'll be happy to take any questions. Yes?
You talked about primarily your connections in the materials area. A big area is information technology. So is it that you don't have emphasis, or you didn't have time to talk about it?
Well, I couldn't mention all the science we do. Dr. Jamie Lawton, as I mentioned, is leaving Europe and coming here. He would have been my information person. I know he's engaged with you on some things, but I didn't focus on it today, but I'd certainly be happy to talk about, we care about information in Europe, certainly. Okay, I don't know who's next. Come on up and grab the mic.
You're for a break.
Okay, break.
10, 15. 10 minutes.
Talk about conference support like it's a good thing.